Good morning. Let us discuss about the 25th of May newspaper over here. The first article it is related to the tale of two cities, in which the author talks about the Juhapura in a suburb of Ahmedabad. What he describes is after the riots in Ahmedabad, slowly the migration of the minorities to this suburb has increased, and this minorities locality do not have the basic amenities that are meant for a citizenry. So this improved migration, this is what has been described as ghettoization of these sublocalities. So the major challenge over here is integration between the minorities and majority of the population. That is, both economic and social integration. It is one of the key challenge of the Muslims in this area. So there is a relatively the struggle for Muslims to enjoy their key rights as citizens of this country. This discrimination previously existed at the individual level. Now this discrimination has become organized and systematic. Now, the land ownership or ownership of the properties, and third thing is entry into different housing societies, getting of houses for rent, admission into educational institutions, and city planning itself, it got biased against the Muslims. So it means it finally led to the increased closed spaces for the Muslims, which can be described as ghettoization again. So this is lack of work and opportunities is pushing them into financial distress. So the major challenge in India, especially in Gujarat, is to overcome this systematic failure or institutionalized discrimination and improving their opportunities from the state. Next is recently the Supreme Court of India has declared that using or personal glorification of a leader at the cost of the public expenditure is antithetical to democracy. So most of the funding happening from the state, if an leader is publicizing his name or developing a personality cult at the cost of the public money, is ultimately limiting the functioning of a democracy. This was particularly challenged by the Tamil Nadu government in Supreme Court. On what basis it challenged is, the Supreme Court judgment held that the President, Prime Minister of India and Chief Justice of India can be an exception to this. So it has said that there is no parity between the center and the states. The Chief Minister, Governor of the state and Chief Justice of the High Court at the state government level, they also shall be given same relaxation. Now if we see in any democracy the purpose of advertisement, it is to inform the people about the performance of a given given government, so that people can make a described or else an informed choice. So next is the Madhav Menon committee was appointed to offer guidelines on this. Madhav Menon committee suggested for a permanent committee to see that the guidelines are properly implemented. Added to that, it also recommended for a special monitoring during the elections. These recommendations, special monitoring, the Supreme Court did not take forward. But however, it's a positive step towards decreasing the personality cult in the country. Next is the missing vigor. It talks about economic performance of Prime Minister Modi's government or the NDA government. So, with regard to this, so what it says is the economic government, economic relations, and also the on a few positive development exists. The first is the fiscal deficit. The deficits they are coming down. It means the current account deficit has come down. The fiscal deficit also has come down. So it means that the government will have more space to operate. Second, the forex reserves are increasing. So the stability is expected on the external front. The investment flow is also slowly increasing. So the macroeconomic fundamentals are relatively stable in the country. Inflation, it is decreasing. Both core inflation and retail inflation. The tax collection is increasing. It shows the buoyancy of the tax system. Now the banks, the major on the wrong side are the NPAs of the banks are increasing. That is what is the second cause of concern. Next is the demand has not yet increased in the economy. The aggregate demand is still in disarray. And third is the creation of the credit or expansion of the credit increases the investment cycle. But this expansion of the credit is not very strong. So the expansion of the credit is still weak in the economy. And fourth thing is the tax terrorism, especially the minimum alternate tax. Lack of clarity by the government on this. It is discouraging FIIs to invest. So on positive side, the government brought in a transparent regime with regard to the auction of various resources such as coal blocks, and also it has brought in new initiatives such as FDI in insurance, railways and construction. So these are the various positive steps. The e-visa regime for China, all these can improve the business of India in China. And on the other hand, failure to take forward GST and other tax reforms. Next, these are the challenges which are still there to address. So on one way there are some developments, key developments exist in the economy. The necessary hope for the investor is not totally revived in the economy. Next is on the foreign front, what are the achievements of the Prime Minister? Now, so what it talks about is the Prime Minister has made visits to around 18 countries, and there is his mark with regard to the foreign affairs of a country. From post-1991 scenario, India's objective in managing its external affairs is to preserve its key security interests and deepen its economic ties. So that the government is trying to create a stable economic environment and also a large international profile for its own self. So in this case, the Prime Minister engagement with US and China. When President Barack Obama visited India, a joint statement was made separately for Asia Pacific region and Indian Ocean region. And next is when Prime Minister Modi visited China, so on climate change, a joint statement was released. So it is seen as a continuation, or it's seen as a vision keeping in mind the oncoming, the Paris conference on the climate change. So there was criticism that China might leave India, or China might have a different stand away from India on the climate change discussions. But this particular joint statement pushed that away. In South Asia, if you come up, there is a proactive engagement of India, which is a very positive step. If you see with Bangladesh, there is land boundary agreement, and added to that, the government is keen to engage deeply with the Bangladesh. So government has supported the Sheikh Hasina's government and its actions on Islamists. But on the wrong side, India's relations with Bangladesh are more being determined, are based on which party is in power. So they are being improved during Awami League tenure, and they are showing a downward trend during Bangladeshi National Party of Khaleda Zia. So in this context, India has to realize that a stable two-party democracy in Bangladesh is in the long-term interests of India. So the Prime Minister Modi is going to travel to Bangladesh in the coming month, and improving the connectivity and transit, all these are going to be on agenda. So the Teesta River Water Treaty also appears is higher on agenda of the Prime Minister. So it means with Bangladesh, the relations are largely on a positive note. Next is with Nepal. So the India's response after earthquake, it was swift and provided for a large space of operations in Nepal. So coming to this, the constitutional crisis is still continuing in Nepal. Now India has to continue its engagement with all the major parties so that Nepal will not drift away from its constitutional process. Next is Sri Lanka. The issues of Tamils and engagement of China in Sri Lanka are the two major contentious issues. So, the Sirisena government has already started the reconciliation process. And India has to watch that. Next is the Pakistani issue. So here, the Modi's government appears to be just continuing the policy of the previous governments. Here, the strategy is called as limited engagement or engagement and disengagement. So that is post 26/11/2018, when terrorist raids have happened in Mumbai, this engagement and disengagement or limited engagement became the stand of India. Now, in this context, the increasing strategic space of Pakistan and Afghanistan and agreements between ISI and Afghanistan National Intelligence Agency, all these are posing new challenges to the Indian safety. So what it was suggested is, so it is better to engage with the Pakistan, and it provides for a government to government contact, and it provides for India to express its voice. Next, the China is also more and more involving with the Afghanistan's reconciliation with Taliban. This Afghanistan, Pakistan and China triad can be of great concern to India in its neighborhood. Next, coming to West Asia, India is mostly a forgotten area for India. Now, India has conducted certain rescue operations to evacuate the civilians during emergency crisis in the conflict-prone areas. Now, India has to establish itself as a force of stability in West Asia. Next, other problem is lack of effective institutional setup of foreign policy. The foreign policy is being influenced by different departments now. The Commerce Department, it influences the trade and economy related. And political related, it is more influenced by the External Affairs Ministry. And passport visa, these regimes by the Home Ministry. So it means the engagement of India with the foreign nations, it is mostly based on, or it is happening in silos. So though the Prime Minister's office power has increased, this functioning on silos is still visible. Now, this lack of institutional strength is visible in operationalization of various trade pacts or regional trade pacts which India is trying to sign. Now, the Trans-Pacific Agreement which India can have an entry very soon, the government is not yet very clear. And the engagement with WTO talks and also purchase of Rafale jets, the 36 Rafale jets, next intellectual property rights, etc. On this, there is no coherent fashion and institutional setup to take them forward. So in this context, these problems need to be addressed. Next is Suhasini Haidar's article. What she said is, from 2008, there is a defined process of limited engagement of India with Pakistan. So what is the objectives of this limited engagement are? India aims to bring the perpetrators of terror on 26/11 to justice. So second is, isolate the Pakistan on the international forums. Third thing is, decrease cross-border terrorism and infiltration into India. Next is, finally, diplomatically, engage with the United Nations and other organizations to take a strong actions on various terror groups which are there in Pakistan. So at the same time, it wants to enjoy the goodwill of the people of Pakistan. But if you observe that, so is the Pakistan is isolated in the international forums? No. US gave its money to the Pakistan, and even China has given a huge investments to the Pakistan is one thing. And the second thing is the terror establishments and they are operating. So Mr. Hafiz Syed's rally in Karachi and Lahore are the examples to it. And the third thing is bringing perpetrators of 26/11 to justice. Mr. Lakhvi was released by the court in Pakistan. So all these things shows that India's limited engagement with Pakistan is not really working. So the Modi has to take forward the engagement to a next level because lack of government to government interaction is providing for or widening the gap between these two countries where alternative sources are misinterpreting the actions and voice of different people in the government. If you see Manohar Parrikar's statement, terrorism is the answer for the terrorists. And the second is the National Security Advisor, Mr. Doval's statement on offensive defense strategy, all these were wrongly interpreted with regard to in the Pakistan by the news agencies. So, as like the previous governments, what they gave to the policy, Modi also can take the engagement to the next level. If you can remember I.K. Gujral, he talked about bringing in neighborhood doctrine and also the composite dialogue. Vajpayee, if you see, he brought in Lahore Declaration. And next is Manmohan Singh. He has provided for 4-point or 4-step formula to Kashmir. Like these things, we can, Modi can provide for something, for a stronger engagement with the Pakistan. So these are the things which are important with regard to the today's newspaper. Thank you very much.